Hello, everyone. I hope that you can hear me speaking. Can everyone just type in their chat block and let me know that you can actually hear me? If you don't know where that is, you can go to the top of your TeamViewer window and click on the two clouds that are next to each other, and that'll open up a chat window, and then you can type yes or no, and let me know if you can hear me okay. Magellan, I'm going to go ahead and mute your mic so we don't hear you typing. Okay, so it's now muted, and if you need to send me a message, Magellan, you can send it on Skype or through TeamViewer. Okay, so I want to thank everyone for showing up. Some people are still lagging behind here, and maybe, of course, some people said they were going to show up and they forget. But the point of today's class is to show the substantial difference between orthodox Elliott wave and more advanced neo-wave concepts. Since I wrote my book over 25 years ago, very few people, the people who bought my book, who have actually taken my class because they're very expensive and they're very, very involved. And so by teaching this free session, I thought it would give people an idea of what these classes are like and how specific and detailed and pretty much scientific wave analysis can actually be, and all the additional rules relating to price, time, and complexity that come into play with neo-wave that are not part of orthodox Elliott wave. This is a very important differentiation, because if you have a lot more rules to work with, the whole process can become much more objective, and it moves out of the realm of opinion and more into the realm of just scientific provable fact. And either you're right or you're wrong, or either you know or you don't know, but it's a process that eliminates the opinion part and allows you to be much more confident about what you're doing, what you're thinking, and what the market's expected to do. So if anyone has any question, you can just type it in the chat section. Magellan will see it and he can let me know if there's any specific questions he thinks should be addressed, and then I can get around to that. We have a separate Skype connection here, and he can just let me know what's going on with the chat room. Okay, so I wanted to work with the S&P because currently it is the clearest of all the different markets, and it has very important long-term structure that's coming to an end, and there's a lot of patterns that we can actually discuss that are coming to a conclusion on a 2.5-year chart, on a 6-monthly chart, on a monthly chart, on a weekly chart. So it allows a whole multi-dimensional perspective, which doesn't happen all the time. And the fact that it's currently happening in the S&P is an indication that we're getting very close to the end of the 10-year bull market that we've been in since 2009. Okay, so taking a look at the big picture, we have the low back in 1982, which is as far back as the S&P data goes that I have. And okay, it's Magellan is asking me to have you add your names to the TeamViewer application so that I know who's attending. So make sure if you can add your name so we know who's asking questions and who's present, so Magellan can keep track of that. Okay, so getting back to the chart starts back in 1982. That's when the last great bull market began, and the market advanced, quite a bit since that low. So what I'd like to do is go through the discussion. This is a 2.5-year high low. It's a chart specifically created for me by my programmer, because the 6-monthly charts, which I'll show you here, were getting so complicated and detailed, it was getting hard to do analysis on them. So I wanted a simplified version of that. Probably the most important thing one of the most important things you can learn from today's session is that management of complexity is absolutely essential to good wave analysis. If a chart looks like this, it's too complicated to do wave analysis. So the number of mono waves you see on the chart is controlling that and managing that is essential to good wave analysis. So the more you have, if it's beyond about 100, which I think this chart clearly is, then it's moving beyond the level of manageability and safety from an analysis standpoint. You want to get it down to preferably about 30 to 50, if you want to go with Fibonacci numbers, and 34 to 55 mono waves. And that moves you into the realm of safety and comfort for doing good wave analysis. So here is a 2.5 year high low. It's only the high and low for every 2.5 years, probably going back to 1982. And you can see things pretty simply. It starts to look a lot like the diagrams in my book. And so it makes it, fairly easy to compare the diagrams in the book to what we're seeing on the chart. So starting back in 1982, you can see the market advanced, a nice amount, went through a correction, another nice advance, another correction, and so forth. Now, most people, when they begin the analysis process, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start messing up this chart and going through the process as if this were happening in real time. Give you an idea of, why the count is what it is and why it can't be other things. So if you were starting this analysis, and let's say it's, 1987, 86, somewhere in there. This is the 1987 high right here. And you saw the market advance, and then it corrected, and then advanced again. You could assume that this is wave one, and this is wave two, and this is wave three. Now, realize wave two is bigger than it appears, but based on the way high-low charts unfold, the longer the time frame that you're covering, the more you might be missing shorter-term price action. So it's possible that there was a high earlier in the 2.5 year period, followed by a big break, and then followed by another high, and then a higher low. So it appears as if the correction is much milder than it actually was. And that's just something you have to learn to accept and deal with as you simplify charts, but it doesn't pose any serious problems. You can always go to the shorter term chart and actually see how big the correction was. But we see the advance here. We're going to just call that wave one, assuming that it's in an uptrend. It's the very first move. It would have to be wave one. The correction that followed would have to be wave two. Now, wave two in a proper impulsive pattern should take as much time as wave one or more. That's an essential, non-negotiable, non-changeable rule. Now, most people who do orthodox Elliott wave do not follow that rule, and that's one reason why the orthodox Elliott wave camp has been so wrong about the stock market for so many decades, constantly expecting a major market top, constantly expecting the end of the world, those kinds of things, because they're not using minimum time requirements for corrections and impulsions and minimum time requirements for B waves and corrections. So this is a neo-wave rule or addition to orthodox Elliott wave, but without it, the whole theory begins to fall apart. So realize that wave two and wave four in a standard 5-wave move, this does not include terminal patterns, which are a different kind of behavior, but in a standard 5-wave move, wave two always has to take at least as much time as wave one, usually comfortably more. 150, 200%, maybe 300%, but that's getting a little on the outside extreme. Wave four, the same thing. You want to take at least as much time as wave three, up to maybe 300%, but generally somewhere between 150 and 250% is a typical amount of time. So we have wave one and two marked. Obviously, the next advance would be wave three, and then it'd be very common for wave four, especially if wave two is not very deep, be very common for wave four to break the 0-2 trend line, which of course it did here. Now, what most people would do is they would immediately assume that this low is wave four. I'll make this adjustment here. By the way, we are recording the session, so if you want to get a copy of the recording later, Magellan should be able to send you a copy of that so you can review it. And I'm going to be going fast. I've been doing this for 35 years. I can throw this stuff out a mile a minute, but it may take time for you to digest some of it. So if you want a recording, just let us know. Okay, so most people would assume, who do, especially orthodox Elliott wave, would assume this is wave four. Now, if this were the fourth wave, then no part of wave 5 should break the 2-4 trend line. So if we assume that wave 5 ended here, which a lot of people would do, the question becomes, what is wrong with that count? So most people would put the 5th wave here, and they might call this, the end of a bigger correction, like maybe they would consider this the end of wave 3, and then this could be the end of bigger wave 4, and then they would start another pattern. They have 1, 2, maybe, I'm not sure exactly, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they call this whole thing the end of a bigger 5-wave move. Let me explain to you why none of this is possible. So not only are there time rules, there are complexity rules that enter the picture with Neo wave that are not part of LA wave. So that poses some serious problems with this particular scenario. So think this through logically. If you have a pattern of a particular degree, in this case, we're calling this, wave 3, we'll call it primary degree, and it's composed of 5 segments. So under Neo wave, the 4th wave must take at least as much time as the 3rd wave. In this case, obviously it didn't. Also, from a complexity perspective, you don't want a same degree pattern to be 1/5 as complicated as another same degree pattern. If any of you have a copy of my book handy, you can go to chapter 4, page 4. And that's 4-4, and it talks about, this starts on page 4-3, the rule of similarity and balance. So it's saying that you never want to consider something to be the same degree if it's less than 1/3 of the price, less than 1/3 of the time, and less than 1/3 of the complexity of the pattern right before it. So, obviously this makes logical, this is a logical assumption. You can't assume something is the same if it's very different. So something can't be considered the same degree if it's much smaller in price, much smaller in time, and much smaller in complexity.